Hello, all. This is the Casual Noob Gamer coming back at you with a new video. Yeah. Anyway, so apparently, buyer beware. What is going on is that apparently there was this item called a MIG switch, which allowed you to basically dump ROMs of your legally owned games onto basically an SD card on the original Switch. And so a lot of people also most likely are using this thing to get games that they never bought, but getting them from online sources where the files are dumped to, which is another method that you could, there's no discerning whether you're using it for that or this, except for what you say, if you own this item. So basically, this item Nintendo obviously doesn't like because you have the ability with it to pirate games at your own discretion that you don't own, and Nintendo obviously doesn't like that. So they knew about this item. It was sold. I think it came out from a person who created it in Russia, and they were selling it online. A bunch of YouTubers bought it to report on it, and had the item as where I had seen that it was. So when Switch 2 came out, Nintendo was obviously trying to make sure that people can't dump games, which apparently with the original Switch, the original Switches that first came out in 2017, you could hack that Switch with a paperclip. That's how easily it was able to be hacked, and because of that, the entire Switch 1 generation, if you had one of those original Switches from 2017, because I think Nintendo later on in firmware updates made it so you couldn't do stuff like that, but as long as that was still available for games, Nintendo basically had an opening where people could take games, and that's how games were leaking online, because not only were people getting the games early from either certain retailers or whatever sources. I mean, this is all speculation. I don't know if we know this officially. So apparently the story is that people were getting games early, dumping them online, and then people were playing those games online early, and then spoiling the games for people on social media sites like Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And so Nintendo was not happy with that because, if people are spoiled for a game, or if they play it early, they're obviously not going to buy the games, which leads to lower sales. That was rumored. The reason why Nintendo and Amazon were fighting, and Amazon stopped selling first-party Switch games, which they just recently started having access to selling first-party Switch games again. So maybe they figured it out. Who knows what it is? So the point of all this is that there was this thing called the MIG switch, like I said, and apparently it was rumored, basically when the Switch 2 first came out, that people who were using the MIG switch, which is a cartridge that can basically, you could put a micro SD card with all your ROMs of your games, that people were apparently legally dumping their original games onto a computer and then putting those files onto the MIG switch. So Nintendo was able to detect when people were using this MIG switch on the Switch 2, And Nintendo, and this is also Sony and Xbox, they all have policies that if you do anything that violates the terms of service, they have the right to. Now, people are saying the term bricking your console, but it's not exactly bricking. Bricking means the console is totally unusable. What Nintendo is doing is if you use a MIG switch on your Switch 2 and they can detect that because you're connecting to online and Nintendo can see what you're doing, there's some sort of detection apparently in the Switch 2 hardware that can send a signal to Nintendo, so Nintendo will then take your Switch, because your Switch has a unique serial number, so they can take your Switch and make that physical Switch 2 device unable to now go online and access Nintendo servers. Even if you change the account that you used on that Switch, they can still do that. So what winds up happening is that people who are using these MIG switches, apparently, allegedly, and getting their consoles allegedly online banned, are then taking them and saying, well, I can't use it, I don't want this, and since it's within the return window, are sending them back to the retailers that they purchased them at. And I don't know if the retailers are giving them a full refund or a partial refund, because it's now an open box, it's got to maybe be restocked. But if it's unable to go online, the people are sending it back to retailers. So if the warning for this video is, if you are buying an open box or used Switch on eBay or retailers, beware that you may be getting somebody's used Switch that has an online ban on the system, because people are getting Switches that are used, or deals or whatever, that are open boxed, and they're starting it up and they're getting an error code stating that this system cannot connect to online. So if you bought that on eBay from a seller who was trying to offload it, and now the seller disappeared, I don't know if eBay can get you your money back. So beware what you're buying online. If you can right now and you can't get a Switch any other way, wait for a new purchase. Do not buy anything used until Nintendo straightens this out. Now, this has happened apparently in the past before with, I think it was PS4 systems I saw someone reporting on. Apparently, because like I said, the PlayStation and Xbox also have this policy where if they detect that you're doing anything, nefarious that they don't like with the consoles, they can make it inoperable. Now, they could also ban accounts too. That's a whole other thing. But for right now, what they're doing is apparently they're just banning consoles once they detect that that's being used on the actual console. So the warning is, if you buy a Switch 2 right now, make sure that you buy brand new from a legitimate retailer. You may have someone on eBay who says, oh yeah, it's new, it's fine. And then you don't know because you're buying it, from a place that's not established. Don't buy from what was it, like Facebook Marketplace and all these different sites and stuff like that, because you don't know what you're getting. And I'm sorry if you are someone who is legitimately trying to sell this stuff and you're seeing me put this message out, but I'm assuming that eventually Nintendo, I think that Nintendo would have already, foreseen this being an issue But, also you don't want to, if Nintendo wants to send a message to people to not use those things, I think Nintendo wants this type of outcry from, people like me and people like you who are trying to buy, who now are now policing these people who are using these things, because Nintendo has no way of, stopping people from legitimately using their money to buy these things, because I mean, if they're using a MIG switch for their legitimate owned games, then they're not breaking any laws, and Nintendo has no legal recourse against these people. The only thing that they can do is, as a private company, they can dictate what their policies are in your user license agreement that you agreed to use their product. And they can say, well, we can make your system inoperable. Now, do I think that that's right? No, because I believe that anything that you purchase, especially this is why I'm a big believer in purchasing physical media, because a physical disc no one can take away from you. But if that disc needs an update to play a game, and you don't have access to servers anymore because your system is made inoperable, now that not only takes out your ability to play your games digitally, but also your games physically that need updates. And that's not right, because that is basically taking something. If you purchase something, that should be yours to keep and to dictate what you do with it. It shouldn't be at the discretion of the company that you bought it from, because then you're not buying a product, you're buying a license to use something. And let me tell you something, when you're purchasing these items, those buttons that you're clicking on their shops online say buy. It does not say rent. There's a separate one, at least on PlayStation. There's a separate button for streaming. It says purchase or buy or whatever it is. So you're not buying a license, you're buying an item, and there's no thing on there. Now, I know on Amazon for Kindles right now, the Kindle store now says you're buying a license, and they put a distinction on there. But if these video game stores are not indicating that you're renting their games, then you're purchasing something, or at least you have the assumption that you're purchasing something. Obviously, now that I'm making this video, I can't say that I don't know the distinction, because I just clearly said that I understand that there is a distinction. But for the average consumer, they're kind of putting out this thing, even though I understand that technically they could. Well, a physical game they can, unless, like I said, the server for an update. But I mean, something needs to be at least clearly stated with what's purchasing, because I guarantee that if a lot more people saw on these stores that this is buying of a license, I mean, listen, if you really want to play something, you're not going to say, oh, well, I'm not going to get it. That's it. I'm packing. I mean, there will be people who will, take the stance and put that up there. But a majority of your consumers will just be like, well, this situation really sucks and it's getting worse, but I want to play this, so I don't care. Anyway, these are my thoughts on this. Anyway, buyer beware. If you're purchasing a new Switch 2, make sure it is new. Do not buy it used. Buy it from a legitimate retailer. I would not buy it from any secondhand sites. until we know any better. I mean, obviously, there's usually some buyer protection on these other sites. So, I mean, yeah, I guess you could still buy it that way. Just know that you're taking a gamble. You may get a system that was basically, I guess I want to call it shadow banned. Like you can't use online on the system anymore, even though you didn't do anything, but the person prior to it, and they're trying to offload it. I mean, listen, I don't like the fact that people are basically using these nefarious products for certain things. If you're using it legitimately, I mean, I guess, but Nintendo doesn't like this thing. I mean, there should be a warning before you go to use it. If the system can detect that you are using this thing that is about to get you banned, there should be a warning on the screen that says using this item will, and it warns you what's going to happen, because how many people used it and then didn't know? Like I said, I mean, it's it's a battle for people that want, because apparently, I mean, I don't know, I've never really looked too hard into it. I've only been told by other places that I've watched videos that apparently you're legally allowed to dump your own video game files onto, ROMs or whatever, so you can use them for yourself. Obviously, you can't share those with anyone else. But I mean, I don't know what the exact legal thing is. Maybe it's one of those things that no one has really put it to the test in court yet, or not. I don't know. Anyway, this is the Casual Mood Gamer. Like, subscribe, comment, and you have a good day. Later.